Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Laurence Sotsky, CEO of Incentify, to discuss the economic benefits of tax credits and incentives for businesses. Laurence, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Jill.
Why do tax credit breaks uniquely offer companies necessary monetary support to propel their businesses during the pandemic?
Well, let's talk for just a minute or two about how projects are greenlit at big organizations. Whether a company is building a new warehouse, a distribution center, a retail store, or even filming a major motion picture, there's a business case built. The folks inside of the organization have to come up with all of the benefits and all of the expenses, and then they decide, are we going to greenlight this project or not? Tax credit breaks, or C&I as we call them, are often the icing on the cake that gets these projects to move forward. And in an environment like we're in today, with record unemployment and entire industries decimated, we need as many of these projects as possible to move forward. We need those warehouses to be built. We need those retail stores to be built. We need those movies to be produced. And this is one of the best ways that the government can inject new liquidity into the economy. Another way to think about this is the proliferation of credits in Georgia. If you think about that for just a second, and in fact, it goes all the way back to the 70s when Jimmy Carter was the governor of Georgia. And what he realized was, during the filming of Deliverance, of all things, that all of a sudden everyone wanted to whitewater raft down the Chattanooga River, because that's where the movie was filmed. And what he realized was, wow, if I film something in Georgia, not only is production coming and we're filming, we have actor revenue and other sorts of revenue coming in, but ancillary businesses are also impacted in a positive way, like the tourism business. So coming back to your question, with 30 million people out of work and entire industries decimated, this is the best possible way that we can get America back to work, is through credits and incentives.
Interesting. You learn something new every day. Now it makes sense, put two and two together, why Atlanta's so popular for filming. So, Laurence, discussing further tax credits for businesses, it's a touchy conversation following the massive breaks that they have received over the past couple of years. There's an argument that they're not paying their fair share. So in what ways can C&I actually benefit the economy?
A great question, Jill, and I'm really glad that you're letting me talk about the other side of credits and incentives, because there is a lot of bad press out there. But let's be really specific. Let's talk about one of the most public C&I controversies, Amazon HQ2. There was so much bad press about HQ2, and it went something like this. Jeff Bezos is a multi-billionaire. He doesn't need these credits and incentives. He should pay more taxes. That was kind of the talking points that people like Bernie Sanders, who I have a lot of respect for, sort of put out there in the press. But let's think about it for just a second. Virginia ended up winning the HQ2 project, and what they will get is Amazon will get a one-time benefit of $550 million. That's it. And in order to get that benefit, this is not a welfare type program where it's just a handout and they just get that money. That's not it at all. They have to generate 25,000 jobs in the Virginia area. Each job has to pay more than $150,000 a year. And they only have till 2030 to create this incredible economy. So let's think about that for a second. So now 25,000 Americans are going to make a pretty high salary of $150,000. What does that do for Virginia? Well, first, the easiest thing to look at is just income tax revenue. So 150,000, 25,000 people, that's $3.75 billion per year that's being injected directly into the economy. And what their income tax rate, I think, is 5.75%. But what else does it impact? All of these high earners in that area. How about the housing market? What's going to happen there? What about the restaurants that are in and around HQ2, the stores, haircutting shops, florists, schools? You name it. There's a whole microeconomy that's built in and around HQ2. What is the economic impact of that? And the way you really need to think about it is, does that economic impact outweigh the $550 million that Amazon was quote unquote given? And if so, then this is a great thing for the economy. It's a simple business case. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to pay $550 million to have this type of a new economy, these number of Americans making that much money? I think the answer is absolutely yes. And if you don't believe me, last year, Governor Cuomo in New York was quoted by saying that it was the greatest tragedy he's ever seen in politics, that HQ2 was moved from New York to Virginia. And I think that's a really important message that we need to get out there.
Yeah, it certainly is. It could have been a great impact to the New York area. Why do businesses tend to overlook these benefits then?
So there's a number of different reasons why businesses overlook these benefits. And let me start with a story of one of my own customers. I work with a huge Fortune 100. And I was talking to them the other day, and I noticed through my own data that they weren't loading as many credits through Q2 as they had in previous quarters. And when I asked him about it, I thought maybe it was just because of the pandemic and wasn't able to travel as much, or people weren't necessarily working on the credits and incentives. He had a very different answer. He said that they had such a good quarter that they felt almost bad to ask for credits and incentives from the government. And we had a long conversation about this because I think there's this impression that if you ask for a credit and incentive, you're doing something wrong, especially if you have a good quarter. But I would argue that that's the wrong way to look at this. And that's what I talked to him about. And that's what I want to keep talking in the news about. If this company can create one more store or one more warehouse or one more distribution center and hire all those people that are currently unemployed, isn't that a good thing? Even if they're getting a credit or incentive from the government, like I mentioned with HQ2, $550 million credit for $3.75 billion in income. It is to me, it's an absolute no-brainer when it comes to this. The second reason is there's lack of discovery. A lot of companies that I've talked to, especially recently, are unable to even find the credits and incentives that are out there. And in fact, one issuing agency that we've been working with in South Carolina had $6.2 billion worth of credits and incentives available, and yet only 223 million was actually captured. That's 3.6%, Jill. A very small, that means that 96+% of those credits and incentives just died on the vine. So they're very hard to find. And the third thing is, from my vantage point, is that the complexities of monetizing these multi-year assets is a difficult one. It requires cross-departmental communication. It requires a lot of information and audit from the government. Some people just kind of lose their wherewithal to do it. Lots of companies will work with advisors, which is great. But in a lot of ways, it's just the process is so complicated that they just can't get these credits and incentives to monetize, so they don't even try.
Yeah, it's such an interesting way to look at this. Certainly, it has changed my perspective a bit. So we have another minute to go here. Tell us where Incentify fits into this ecosystem.
I would love to. So Incentify is the technology background for C&I. We are the only purpose-built solution for credits and incentives to help manage and monetize this critical asset class. So we have discovery tools that companies can use to find all of the federal, state, and local credits and incentives that might be available to them. We have management and reporting tools, so you can actually create a workflow and define all the steps that are necessary to make sure that you don't run out of compliance in any of these credits or incentives. And finally, I would say that for us, we believe in C&I. You can tell that I'm very passionate about this particular asset class, and we don't see enough people fighting for C&I. We really want to be there to champion C&I all the way through. If people use our system, that's great. If they don't, that's okay too. We want to see America get back to work.
All right, Laurence, appreciate the insight. Thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you, Jill.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.